Welcome to this edition of Locker Room Chat, brought to you by the Shannon Sports Museum of Tacoma, Perry County, and Rainier Asphalt and Concrete, the #1 asphalt and concrete contractor in the Tacoma and Seattle area. For quality workmanship and top-notch customer service, contact Rainier Asphalt and Concrete at www.rainierasphalt.com. Once again, www.rainierasphalt.com. And let them know that you heard about them on the Locker Room Chat. My name is Jay Strickers, and I'm your host for this evening's event. I'm extremely proud to be able to introduce and talk with three of our local Tacoma, Perry County, past NFL football officials. These are guys that have made it to the very top of the profession of football officiating, and that would be in the National Football League. We have Aaron Pointer, Kirk Dornan, and Buddy Horton. So hello, guys, and welcome to Locker Room Chat.
Good evening.
So why don't we go ahead and start with each one of you sharing with us just a little bit about when you joined the NFL. What position was it that you worked when you were in the league? And we'll do our quick introductions, and then we'll move on with some questions. So, Aaron, you're the senior in the group. Tell us a little bit again. When you joined the NFL, what position you worked in the league?
I joined the NFL in 1987. It seems like it was a long time ago, but I was a line judge when I joined my first year. Pat Haggerty was the referee at the time. I was a line judge for just 1 year. I had some problems at line judge. That was a time when they had the gun. You had to have a gun to end the quarters, and I was the timer. The line judge timed the games, and during a ball game, I forgot that I had the gun, and the quarter ended. And they were waiting on me to shoot the gun to officially end the quarter, but the gun had slipped down my pants. I had to reach down and try to get it. And by the time I got it and I fired it in a guy's ear, and he cussed me out. And that was my introduction into the National Football League. That was in Kansas City. They weren't the Chiefs that they are today, but it was a good experience in my first year as a line judge, and only year as a line judge.
There you go. Great old Wilbert Harrison song, Kansas City, Here I Come.
Yes.
Kirk, you're number two.
I was hired in 1994 and spent my first year with Dick Hantak. Was brought in, actually I was a field judge, but it was the same position that I was used to, which is now what is the back judge, in the middle of the field behind the secondary. And one of my very first games was in Camp Randall Stadium, and it was the Rams playing the Packers. And Nate Jones and he was the side judge, and we would go to the visiting coach, and that was Chuck Knox, and went through the whole spiel that you do. And Chuck, they had just made a concentrated effort on illegal contact. Well, it was all brand new to me, so it wasn't a change. And Knox says, so tell me, what's this new philosophy with illegal contact? And Nate starts to tell him, and Chuck goes, no. I want to hear it from the new kid. So all of a sudden, I'm like, yeah. So I basically told him what the whole deal was, 5 yards going to be enforced strictly and whatnot. And then he says, well, have a great career. So we're out on the field warming up, and this guy I'd recognized over the years before I was in the league, you'd see him on the sideline. He came up behind me and he introduced himself, and he said, this is going to be a great year for football. It's going to be my last year. He said, this is my 29th year. He says, how many have you got? And I said, 5 quarters. And then I just tried to stay out of the way for 20 years.
There you go, Kirk. Thank you much. Buddy, how about you when you first came in and your first crew chief?
Uh, my first year was 1999. I came in as a back judge. It was Kirk. My referee was Tony Crente, and I happened to have been on a crew with Aaron that year, as a matter of fact. And it's a great experience. My very first game was the Oakland Raiders at the Green Bay Packers. And I'm walking out the tunnel like 45 minutes, 50 minutes before the game. And the first person I see is Al Davis. He's in white, all in white, got the diamond-studded glasses on. And I'm walking by him. I said, wow, I said, that's Al Davis, you know? And I go walk by him, and he says, hey, Mr. Horton, how you doing? This guy knows me? And he says, hey, I'm Al Davis. I said, I hope you have a great career. Congratulations on getting the NFL. And I was shocked. But it's funny, every time after I saw Al Davis, he always said, hey, Mr. Horton, how you doing? Have a good game. And it was just one of those things that was just memorable. And being in Lambeau Field for your first game, Brett Favre was the quarterback. And what, Aaron, he came back the last minute of the game and won the game against the Raiders. Remarkable. It's a great experience.
Well, it is remarkable for all three of you guys to have made it to that level. And as you all know, we all want to give our respects to the guy, the first guy from Tacoma-Pierce County to get into the NFL, and that was Jack Johnson. Yeah. Through the years, Don Hobble participated certainly in the NFL from Tacoma and Pierce County. Yep. And of course, right now we've got Craig Ralstad as a referee in the NFL. So you look at that, 6 people through the years from Tacoma and Pierce County in the NFL, pretty remarkable. And of course, Jack started out in 1976 when the Seahawks started.
Yep.
So,
guys,
there you go. That's right. Thank you. So, as you guys know, each one of you's had significant backgrounds in sports, is an upbringing through active participation that you had in sports, and also through different family connections. So tell us a little bit about who it was and what the circumstance was that got you to make that first step to become an official. We know it certainly wasn't at the NFL level when you started, but what was it? Who was it? What was the inspiration you had to move on to the NFL? And Aaron, we'll go ahead and start with you and go right down the line.
Well, I got started officiating in 1972 after playing baseball in Japan for 3 years. And I got into officiating to earn some extra money. I never had any idea or inkling that I wanted to be an official. But I worked for a guy by the name of Tom Cross, and he said, you want to make some extra money? You can become an official. And so I said, I think I'll give it a try. And so I started out officiating football and basketball, officiated baseball. But football appealed to me the most because we were further away from the fans. Plus, there was a group of us that could get together after the games and talk about sports. If you've ever officiated baseball, you're just right there, and you can hear all the stuff. But football, even though I never played football in high school, it was really fun, and that was 1987, and I didn't have any inkling of going much higher than just doing the local stuff. And as I moved up, I was doing pretty good, and as I moved up to high school football, I was doing pretty good. I moved on to college football. I was doing pretty good. And then I had an opportunity to be a referee in the Pac-10. It was a Pac-10 before it was a Pac-12. And I had to make a decision. Do I want to go to the NFL, or do I want to be the first full-fledged referee in the Pac-10? And because of my financial situation and the money involved, I chose to go to the NFL, and was in the NFL for 17 years before I retired. And I retired because of medical reasons. In fact, the last game that I officiated for the NFL was the Pro Bowl, and Kirk Dornan was on that game. And I only officiated half the game because I had an operation for prostate cancer right after the season, and the doctor said, not to do anything strenuous. But heck, I felt good after the operation. Had given blood and stuff, but being in Hawaii in the football game, I got a little dizzy and I couldn't make it past the second quarter, and had to come out of the game. But anyway, it was a great career. I had a great time, and I have some great memories and lots of good things to say about the NFL and the football officiating.
So now, Aaron, let me ask you a follow-up question here. You grew up in a family with athletes and everybody participating, and you certainly basketball and baseball. Nobody else in the family got into officiating. Did they ever give you a hard time, or anybody ever think that would Aaron ever become a football official? Was there any interaction with your family about you getting into officiating?
No one ever thought about it being an official, baseball, basketball, or football. And I grew up with a lot of athletes. Paul Silas and I grew up together.
Yep.
We were on some great high school basketball teams, and he was avid, not official, but he was an avid guy that got on the officials, and we all got on the officials. But I was the only one that took the step to become an official. And no one thought of becoming an official. Being an official was like, being something that you don't want to be ever when I was growing up, because officials were the bad guys. But it's not that way. In fact, it's evident as what you see going on now, that being an official is really a tough job. It's the toughest job that you can have, but it's one of the most satisfying jobs that you can have too. They have in the NFL now the best officials in the world. And they had, at the time when I was there, they had the best officials in the world. And people just don't realize that full-time officiating won't help, create better officials, because you can't teach judgment. You can have guys that would be great at the rule book, but they still have to make those judgment calls. And unfortunately, we don't see the game in slow motion and stop action and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so you have to call what you see and call what you think you saw, but it's something that is really rewarding. And when you finish a ball game, you've done the best that you could, and so it's been a very enlightening experience being a football official. If you don't believe it, try it.
There you go.
Officiate.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. Kirk, we know there's a significant officiating experience in your family growing up and even passing on now. But what about you? The inspiration that you had to first get involved in officiating?
Well, like you said, I grew up with it. With my dad, he was a football, basketball official, and so we were every night at the dinner table. We were talking one sport or the other, rules and situations, and it just kind of became natural. But I wasn't sure I wanted to work. And when I was done playing baseball, my dad said, "Why don't you go to the meeting? It's got a clinic next Monday night," and said, "You don't have to work." But he said, "If you don't go to the meeting, then you can't work. But if you go to the meeting, you don't have to work." Well, it turned out to be a trick question. What it meant was you're not going to work a varsity game if you don't go to the clinic. Well, you're a first-year guy. You're not going to work a varsity game anyway, so it was irrelevant. But he told me, he said the clinician was Marv Tomervik, another Tacoma. And he was a state clinician. And so I met him and listened to the whole rules and philosophy and mechanics and whatnot, and still wasn't sure. We talked to him a little bit afterwards, and he said, "Well, you ought to at least give it a try. Try it for a year. If you don't like it, fine." And I still wasn't sure. And about a week later, and I was going to junior college at the time, so I was living at my folks' house, and Sunday night, the phone rings. It's a guy named Stu Hansen, who was the signing secretary for the Yakima Valley officials. He says, "Hey, I've got an assignment for you tomorrow." And I said, "Well, I haven't decided if I'm going to work." He said, "Well, I think I'm calling you, so I think you're going to work." I said, "Well, I don't have a uniform." He said, "Well, I'm guessing that someone in your family's got access to a uniform." Well, my dad was in the sporting goods business. Sunday night, we head into town and I get outfitted with the uniform. And of course, I don't hear this at the time until later the next day. The game is at Sela. It's a junior varsity game. That's where I went to school. And the kids that are playing were Colt League baseball players of mine 3 months earlier.
Oh,
And that was not comfortable. But the referee on the game made it even more uncomfortable. It was my dad.
Mm.
So anyway, got through the game. Ended up, as it turned out, I did get a game at the end of the year. They were short officials at the end of the year, and they did crossover games at the end of the year. They didn't want local officials working local games. So the Yakima Valley group had to send 4 people down to Walla Walla, Kennewick at Walla Walla at Borleski Stadium. And so there was 3 of us that were apprentices that year. And we were given a test at the last meeting, and they just flat told us highest score is going to get a game. They didn't tell us any other details. So anyway, I was lucky enough that I grew up with it. So I had a big advantage with the rules, and I was able to get that assignment. And it was Walla Walla never lost at home. Kennewick went in and beat them 14-13. And the Walla Walla coach came up to my dad afterwards and said, "You can bring him with you anytime." So it was nice welcome.
That's a great compliment. Great compliment.
It really was.
As most people know, but maybe not everybody knows, Kirk's dad was Duke Dornan, a longtime umpire in the Pac-8 conference. Of course, Kirk worked in the Pac-10 conference. Now his son, Matt Dornan, is a line judge in the Pac-12 conference. So we've had a lot of officials and their sons that have worked in the Pac-12, 8, 10, and 12, but they're the first to have a granddaddy, his son, and then the grandson, all having officiated in the Pacific Pac-10, 8, Pac-10, and Pac-12 conference. So well done. Buddy, you're up. There's some history with you in athletics and participating in football, and your brother, tell us how this all came about for you.
It came about for me when I was a child growing up through the Southland Boys Club. I worked at the boys club, so I was on the court refereeing some of the games out there, to pick up games. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, doing basketball. But when I got to high school, I had 2 gentlemen that were instructors at my school, and I had no idea who they were at the time. One was Charlie Gilmore, who took me under his wing and let me do the PE classes. I was kind of in charge of running them, but I was also like a referee. So he had me a whistle and a shirt, said, "Here, go out and referee the intramural practices and stuff." So I didn't know who he was. The driver's ed teacher was Mr. Ed Strickerts. So this is Tacoma High School, who had 2 Pac-8 officials at the same school. And I had no idea at the time, who they were. I mean, these guys were quiet gentlemen. They did their job. But when I was in high school, I was always amazed at the officials. I worked at, in our association, Western Washington. There was one person in particular I always stood out, was Merle Hagbo.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was so cool, calm, and collected, running him down the sidelines, nothing really ruffled his feathers. But I didn't know who he was at the time until I joined the association after working basketball. And so I was asked to join. I did. And then all of a sudden, Merle is big as life right there. I said, wow, I just kind of admired this guy. But see, I also admired a couple other guys, John Bergenzer from baseball, Bob McGinnis from baseball, and Ole from baseball. So these were guys that they had great people skills. And that's what I remember most about these guys is that, especially with my mother, she was on these guys bad, but they took it and they laughed about it, which was good because, she was good natured about it. But I'm saying, wow, these guys can take this. They must be something special. But, after the game, though, they all were friends. She come talk to them, they were laughing and stuff, having a good time. But I kind of had a bond with these guys for what they did. And it always kind of piqued my interest. So I got into basketball. And then about 1981, I was asked to join the local association here, and I did. And I was kind of fortunate. My very first varsity game was my second year. Was with I got a varsity game late in the year. It was Curtis at Federal Way, and I worked with Dan Spriesterbach. And I had a call I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, my first early game, I had a pass interference call. I went down through the flag, just did this. I had no idea what I was doing. And then Dan was just shocked. He said, "Hey, you do a pretty good job." I says, "Well, I do. Well, thank you." So then he said, "Well, how'd you like to, come work some posse scrimmages with us?" And I said, "You want me?" He said, "Yeah, I think you do a good job." And so, Jay, the rest that we kind of go. I don't think I missed one scrimmage and one practice in 5 years. Kurt was there with us. And we would meet those Saturday mornings. Those mornings to go up to Husky Stadium and work the games and stuff. And then I was always on the sideline. And just out of the blue, Verl Sorgen was going to be at one of the games 5 years after after started. There was a purple and gold game, and Verl Sorgen was there. And they said, "We're looking for back judge, buddy. Can you work back judge?" I'd never worked it before. So I got back there and did it, and made a call in front of one of the veteran officials, and Verl came up and said, "Hey, why don't you come have breakfast with me the next morning at the Marriott?" I was still shocked. He says, "Yeah." So basically, he kind of hired me on the spot. But fast forward about 5 years, because I was on a split crew, and so I'm working a game in Arizona or someplace, and Jack Johnson comes up. He was scouting for the NFL. He said, "Hey, buddy, have you ever thought about applying to the NFL?" I said, "No." I'm kind of happy, doing what I'm doing now. I never thought about it. I never thought that would be something within reach of me. And I never even thought about it. I was just happy, in the world I was in. And he says, "Buddy, they have a file on you already. All you do is just send them a letter seeking an application. That's all you got to do." And I did. And 5 years later, I got in. After my 9th year in the NFL, I got in. Which happened to have been my last college game was the 1991. It was the very first BCS Bowl championship game, Tennessee at Florida State. Remember that one, Jay?
Sure do, buddy. Absolutely. Well, you bring up a good question here about working through the years in officiating. This is my next one, because most people don't realize that officiating does start out at the grassroots level. It's junior high, it's Pop Warner, it's Little League, and then it's the small schools, out in the county, and then, you maybe get into the city and have a game and et cetera. So when did it first enter your consciousness, guys, that maybe, just maybe, you could get somewhere above where you're saying? Buddy, you've hit to that a little bit there. It sounds like it wasn't in your consciousness at the beginning of the fact that you could get to the NFL. But when was it, guys, when you were going along and officiating, you're working, getting some experience, and boom, it comes into your mind, something, just maybe I can make that next step? And maybe it was an event, maybe it was somebody, as Buddy said, that talked to you. When did the big step come into your life, going from high school to the Pac-10, whatever, and then on to the NFL? But the first sense that maybe it could happen.
Well, for me, the first inkling that, I might be able to do it was working football at the small college level, working a ball game for Frosty Westering at PLU. Frosty was just a great guy, and I remember working ball games for him, and how he was such a gentleman. And I told myself, geez, officiating is not that bad, and and you meet some great guys, and you do your job. And so I said, well, maybe I can, even do it better. And college, it was a training ground for me for the NFL, even though Buddy and I worked together, and Buddy appreciated my singing on flights back after ball games.
But leave it to your sisters to sing, please.
I used to sing for Buddy on plane rides back after the ball game, and so he enjoyed my singing. And so, but anyway, that was how I knew that maybe I can do the job at the next level. And I always prided myself in saying that if I start doing something, I want to do as well as I could, and be as good as I can, and go as far as I can in any sport, whether it was playing or officiating. And so that's how I knew that maybe I can do it, but I didn't know it at the time, because when you sign up, as Buddy tells you, they scout you for a couple of years before they tell you that you're being considered. And so I signed up for the NFL about 4 years before I was given an interview to become official. And at that time, I don't know if they still do it now, but I remember the interview that I had to become an NFL official was in Los Angeles. I flew to Los Angeles and met with a psychiatrist there for about an hour, and he asked all kinds of questions. I can remember the questions now. The psychiatrist asked me, just tell me about yourself and what you can remember about yourself from as early as you can till now. And I answered him, all the stuff that I'd done in as much as I could remember. And then he asked me if a player or a coach thought that you were the greatest official in the world, what would he say about you? And then he asked me the question that still I wonder today, I hope that I answered it correctly. If they thought you were the worst official, what would they say about you? And so you're not going to rip yourself saying that you're blind or something. And so that was my first interview with the National Football League, with the psychiatrist from the NFL. And I assume that there's psychologists that are still involved with the NFL, because they take it seriously. I mean, it's something that is taken seriously, and something that I knew that I was on my way when they interviewed my neighbors where I was living in University Place at the time. And so that gave me an idea that, heck, I've got a chance here to do something and do something well. And so I took a shot at it. And at that time, the NFL wasn't, the pay was right around what colleges were making at the time. And not until after I'd been in the NFL for a couple of years did it start making a difference in the pay, and the officials unionized and became, paid a little more, just say a little more than minimum wage. So let's just leave it at that.
So let me ask you this, Aaron. You reference it. You grew up in the same house with Paul Silas.
Yes.
I know you had a brother who went on to play collegiate basketball, I believe. We all know about the Pointers' enormous success in your family. Do you think there was something in your DNA or being around people that were that successful that also helped you have that sense that I can be successful at the highest level?
Well, I had a chance growing up to witness a lot of great players playing. We lived across the street from a playground called Defirmary Park in Oakland, California. And they had a basketball court there that was lighted. And we used to play basketball there until they turned the lights out at night. And I had a chance to see Bill Russell play there. And I had a chance to see, Kurt Flood play baseball, and a lot of those guys, and Ernie guys that I grew up with that played, ended up playing professional sports, like Mike Farmer and Bill Russell and guys like that would play at the park, and Paul Silas would play there. And so it was something like when we would play basketball at night, I mean, there would be spectators that would come out and watch us play and cheer us. And that was 3-on-3 basketball. It wasn't 5-on-5. And so it was tough. You had to be tough. You had to know what you're doing in order to stay game, because if you lost the game, you had to sit out and another group came on. But if you won, you stay on the court. And so that was kind of an inspiration to me, to watch those great guys play. And to watch all those guys that played basketball was the sport that I was really fond of playing at the time. Baseball came as a secondary sport, but basketball was my sport. And that's how I went to college. I went to college on a basketball scholarship to the University of San Francisco. But it was interesting to see all of those guys play and their success. And McClymonds High School was considered a place of champions. In fact, it was part of the logo of the School of Champions, McClymonds High School. In basketball, I had an opportunity to play on a basketball team that never lost a ball game, a high school ball game. In the 2 years that I played varsity basketball, we went four years without losing a game. We won 105 straight games.
Wow.
And we're considered the mythical high school national champions. And so it was just something that we grew up with, something that we expected, something that we tried to reach for. And so those guys were my inspiration and were the reasons why I excel, being close to parks and how parks and recreation is. In fact, that's why I still stay in parks and recreation now, because I realize how important it is for kids to have that experience, to play and to do it and try and experiment. And so I had an opportunity to be in parks and recreation, and that's where I'm still doing it today. I'm a park supervisor for Metro Parks in Tacoma, and still encourage kids to play and try to do their best and to be good citizens. And sports is the greatest teacher of sportsmanship and to be good citizens that there is. You learn to win and to lose with dignity, and to not get on the referees. And heck, we were.
Well, thank you, Aaron. You know, that sense of being around success at that high level and being in that culture certainly would, you would think, would lead to the success that you've had. And Kirk and Buddy, I want you guys to talk about that a little bit too. Kirk, you're up next. You wanted to first enter your mind that, dang it, maybe you can move up. I know certainly seeing your pop and the success he had to be a little bit of an inspiration, but was there a time when you sound like you were a little reticent to get involved initially, but when you got into it, was there a time when you thought, dadgummit, I'm going to give this all I got?
Yeah, I think each time you go up to another level, you're always a little leery of, am I getting in over my head?
Yeah.
And my beginning of it was about 1990, similar to Buddy. Jack Johnson brought his wife Kathy into my business and had lunch, and he said, "Can you sit down for a bit?" So we sat down a little bit, and he said, "You need to apply to the NFL." And I looked at him and I said, "I'm not even on a crew in the Pac-10 yet." He said, "They're not going to hire," like Aaron said, "they're not going to hire you tomorrow. It's going to be 3 or 4 years." He said, "I observed your game, Arizona State at Washington, a couple of weeks ago." And he said, "You did something that a lot of people would never do." I was the back judge. My key on the couple plays was the tight end, and the University of Washington tight end pulls down the line of scrimmage, just slides right on down, grabs a hold of the defender's legs and tackles him. So I launch a flag, and you remember back in the day, still today, that's 25, 30 yards away. And you're thinking, boy, I hope I got that right. And then it happened a few minutes later, same exact play, same thing. And I throw again. Well, Jack was apparently real happy up there in the stands observing me, but the University of Washington coach was not real happy about it. He got a hold of our side judge, and he said, "You tell that bleep Dornan to concentrate on pass interference and quit worrying about the holding." So anyway, so Jack, we had talked a little bit later, and I just felt like I wasn't going to do it with my situation with not getting that many games yet. But I waited a year, and I got a few extra games. So I think in 91, then I got in touch with Jack and told me what to do. And at the time, it was Art McNally, who we just passed away here a few months ago. And sent in my application. And like Aaron said, I never heard a word for 3+ years. And out of the blue, early January of 94, I get a phone call, and it's Jerry Seaman. And he's telling me that I'm a finalist. And he said, "They're going to have some of our supervisors get in touch with you. There's a whole process that you'll go through, and just want to congratulate you and wish you the best." And so then, like Aaron, I remember the guy, I don't know if they're the same guy, Aaron, but was it Fred Bates from Philadelphia?
I remember the guy's name. Yeah, no, I don't.
The guy was unbelievable. You couldn't, because I've always learned, been taught, you try to figure out what the interviewer wants, what's he after, and you do that by asking him back a question. So the first thing he says is, tell me a little something about Kirk Dornan. And I said, I mean, that was like, I had no idea. And I said, well, can you give me, like, are you talking about my personal life, my football life? He said, whatever you want. Didn't matter what I asked him. He said, whatever you want, whatever you want. So finally, I took out another old trick I learned is talk about yourself in the third person, the way you've heard other people talk of you. So then I just said, well, and I'm just going to give you 1, 2, or 3 word phrases that I hear people say about me. And because I really don't have a say about me. And so I rattled off a few things and he went on to the next subject and round we went. It was always never about speed until he asked the question exactly that. What's more important, speed or accuracy? And I know exactly where he's going with that. And I'm thinking, but you know, you can get in trouble over doing some things. So I said, so like maybe like what I do at work, or are you talking at football? And what I got was whatever you want. That's all he said. So I said, well, okay, like at work, if I get in there in the morning, I open up the till and I'm $1 short, I'm not going to spend 30 seconds trying to find that dollar. But I said, if we're now talking about on the football field and there's a disagreement about a rule that's being applied or what somebody else had a different viewpoint, vantage point, I said, we're going to spend a little time. We're going to get it right. We're not just going to hurry to get off the field. And so then we get to the last part and it's an IQ test. He said, now this is both speed and accuracy. He said, there's 50 questions. You're probably not going to get to all of them. It's a time test. You need to get as many right as you can. So if you get stuck on number 2 or number 3, and you're worried about accuracy, you're not going to get to number 10, 11, 12. So he said, you got to decide at what point do you just move on. So did the best I could, got all done. It was 2.5 hours of interview. And he said, so I've been asking you all these questions. Do you have any for me? I said, I have 2. He said, okay. I said, I can't believe that you didn't ask me anything about my family, my upbringing. He said, I didn't have to. He said, remember you told the story about your mom? Well, that story was every Monday night, every Tuesday night, we're talking football or basketball. Till one night, my mom lost it. She picked up her silverware, slams it down on the table and says, we're not talking football rules again tonight. And she stomps out of the room. My dad was a bit of a wise guy at the time. He looked around, waited a couple of seconds. He said, maybe tonight we should talk about basketball, maybe free throw administration. That was just, he said, yeah. He said, I didn't have to ask you anything. You had dinner with your family every night. He said, what's the other one? I said, how'd I do on that speed versus accuracy IQ test? He says, unfortunately, that one I can't tell you. So I said, I answered every one of yours and you're only going to answer one of mine. He laughed and it was the greatest experience I've had. I was just amazed, the process. It's the old, I don't know if you guys remember what I got out of it. They'll take you out and they'll bring you back and everything is a different subject. And they'll take you out and you get all done. They've taken you out 8 or 9 different and bring you back. And I think at the end of the thing, you realize if you were trying to pull his wool over his eyes, you're going to get caught in that trap. So it was an amazing 3 hours.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing. I was at the Marriott, SeaTac Marriott.
Yeah.
And they taken me and I just in the room with them for 3 hours. And that was all just a blur. But I learned a lot about myself and learned a lot about the league too. So, but they do a little differently now. They have what they call XP Insights, a company, and it's all virtual, where they do send out a questionnaire. It takes them about 2 hours to do it, and the candidates have to send them back in, and they do a complete profile workup on everybody. It's pretty spot on about them to be able to read what these people go through. Kurt, did Matt tell you how he did on his?
I'm sorry?
Did Matt tell you how he did on his? There's a
Yeah, that's
psychological
right. No,
profile.
Matt has not been invited yet.
No. He should have already had a profile done, I think, by XB Insight.
Oh, I have no idea. I'll have to ask him.
Okay. That's what they're doing now.
So, Buddy,
Yes, sir.
same question to you there. You know, you had a brother that had enormous success on the field and in coaching. You talked about your mom's influence on you, the environment you grew up in with successes you had. You mentioned a little bit when you were maybe taken a little bit back by somebody suggesting you should make that move. When did it come into your mind? Dadgummit, I'm going to do it. I think I can do it. Let's go for it.
I think it was after the game in Arizona when Jack Johnson was there. We were just in the lobby and he just said it. And, you know, I gave it a couple of weeks to think about it because we're still in the middle of the season. And so near the end of the season, the NFL season was still going on. So I just sent a letter to D'Souza. What's his first name? What was D'Souza's first name?
Ron D'Souza.
Ron? Yeah.
Ron D'Souza. I guess he was the guy that was the head of the scouting at that time. And so I sent one to him. He sent me back a letter saying, I need your resume. This is what we're looking for. 5 years of Division I experience, da-da-da-da-da. You know, at the time, I had all the qualifications. I sent it back to him. Didn't hear nothing for 2 years. So they were probably actively watching me at the time, but I had no idea. And then finally, I got a call to come back to New York for an interview. And by the time we were going to do for the actual interview, so first the psychologist came out and talked to me for a couple of hours. Then they did the background check on me, which they sent the security agent for the Seattle Seahawks down to my house, talked to me at the house. Unbeknownst to me, he'd already been to my job and talked with people at my job, my coworkers. And he'd already been to my neighborhood, talked to my people in my neighborhood. You know, if there's activity at the house, or the police there, you know, it's unusual activity and stuff. So hey, who's this guy come talk to me about you? I said, well, I have no idea. But then he came and talked to me about it. You know, we became pretty good friends after that, the security agent up there. Then they sent me back to New York. I went back with Steve Wilson for an interview, and his was first, mine was second. And they gave us a rules test while we were there, of NCAA rules while we were there. And we both passed, and we both got hired. Steve Wilson and I got hired. Well, not hired. We're hired into NFL Europe. So then we'd go to NFL Europe. We go to Europe, and that was the training ground to get into the NFL. So you go there and hang out for all expense paid trip to Europe. They're referee football. They'll put you up for 2 weeks. They'll pay your travel and everything, and just to see how you got along with everyone. You know, they want to know if you could take criticism from the supervisors that were there with you. I remember my first year, I was with Mike Pereira, was my referee over there. And we had Terry McCauley on the crew. Carl Paganelli was on the crew. Mike Spaniel was on the crew. One guy from Europe was on the crew. But we spent the whole 2 weeks together over there. And it was a lot of fun. You learned a lot about yourself. You learned a lot about the game. But they also learned a lot about you and how you interact, how you take criticism. Are you a team player? And so I went over there for 3 years before I got hired in 1999. In fact, it was April 1st when Jerry Seaman gave me a call. And you know, I was at work, and he said, it was at noon, April 1st. And I said, is this Buddy Horton? I said, yeah. He said, this is Jerry Seaman. I said, no, it's not. It's so, who's this playing April Fool's joke on me? And it was a long silence. And he, you know, Jerry wouldn't laugh very much. He didn't have that much of a sense of humor where he laughed. And I guess it dawned on him what day it was. He said, no, this is Jerry Seaman. I want to congratulate you on being hired to the NFL. But, you know, I was like 4 years after I applied. The 3 years I got into NFL Europe, so it was 5 years all total before I got hired, but it was my 9th year in the Pac-10. So I spent like 3 years or 4 years on a split crew. Kirk, didn't we split a year or two together at back judge?
No, I ended up only being on a crew 2 years.
Okay, yeah. So I was on
a crew back then.
And I know I split one with Don Carey, a year with Don Carey.
Yeah.
Then, you know, I got hired in. I was, you know, I was kind of surprised, but it was, like I said, going in, it was never one of my goals to do that. What happened is I was basketball. I love basketball officiating. And so I went to a Pac-10 basketball tryout, to get into the Pac-10. And at the time, Frank McIntyre was the supervisor of officials. And Tom Cross, he was always getting the guys together. Hey, let's go. Frank McIntyre's going to be here. We had to drive up to Everett. And Kevin Johnson, Jack's son, was with us on this trip to go up to Everett to work out in front of Frank McIntyre. So I'm up there working. I thought I did a good job and stuff. So Frank comes up to me and he says, "Hey, buddy," he says, "I understand you're a football official also." I said, "Yeah." Kevin said it right here. He says, "Yeah." He says, "I think you may want to stick with football instead of basketball." Okay. And I was just, "What?" Kevin just broke out laughing. It was so funny. But yeah, I said, "Oh, okay, I got the message." So that's kind of funny. A couple of weeks later, I got hired to be a Pac-10 women's basketball official. Then a week later, I got hired by Verl. So I got hired with Pac-10 women's 1989 and Pac-10 football in 1989. And then, like I said, the NFL was never on my radar until Jack Johnson came into my life and told me that. Which, as you guys know, Jack Johnson was also and Gene, bless her soul, was the assigning secretary. So for basketball. So, they always gave us the games. If you were available, they gave you the games. And so after that, it's all history for me. And then my brother, my first game in the NFL was in Indianapolis, and he was coaching for the Cincinnati Bengals at the time. So that was my first game was in Indianapolis there. And a week later, I go to Cincinnati filling in on a crew, and he's there also. So but I had him like 4 times throughout my career.
You bet. Well, to bring that question up, because I think we all remember, our on-field officiating needs to certainly behind us, guys, certainly for you guys, but it was such a thrill working your way up and getting that first high school varsity game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you'd get your first game in PLU, UPS, Central, Enfield, whatever, and you just wanted to be successful. And then the next steps to the Pac-10. And what a great honor. And then for you guys to move into the NFL, each one of those steps, they were just thrilling, exciting times in your lives. They had to be, and you guys all did it with great success. So our hats are off to you. Got another question here for you.
I want to say one thing here. I think the common thread for all of us was Tom Cross.
Yep.
He was the person that was instrumental in, I think, each one of us getting to those next levels. And without him, basketball for me too, he was right there for me every step of the way in basketball too. So I owe a debt of gratitude to Tom for what he's done for me.
In the era of all 3 of you guys and me, you got to the Pac-10 if Tom Cross gave you his blessing.
Exactly.
And if he didn't, it wasn't going to happen. But if he was behind you, you knew you had the possibility. The opportunity was there, huh? You had to prove yourself, but he created the opportunity.
He did.
Yep. Okay, guys, from your perspective, officiating in the NFL, the most challenging part, the component of officiating. Some folks maybe say, hey, it's the crowd, it's the noise, it's the scrutiny, coaches, rules knowledge, mechanics, staying in shape. What would you say is the most challenging component for you? And then a follow-up to that is, was there a call that you felt was consistently the most challenging call to make in the game? Offensive holding, defensive pass center, whatever. So most challenging component to the game, and was there a call, maybe not just the most challenging call, the one that maybe you like to call the most, or the one that was in your wheelhouse that you had to call the most, that you had to be up on to make sure you were going to be successful? And Aaron, you're up again.
Yeah, probably one of the things that the NFL requires of the officials that they assign is that you have an opportunity to work games in front of really large crowds. And that's why for years, I think it's changed now, there were no NFL officials from the state of New York. They were from all of the other big cities, but there were no Division I schools in the state of New York. And so you never saw anybody from New York that worked games there that was in the NFL, because they never had a chance to officiate before lots and lots of people. But it was just a thing that they required. One of the things that, being on the line of scrimmage, you don't officiate the whole field. You have responsibilities, and the guys that you're responsible for are the guys that you have to watch. And for me, the toughest call that I had to worry about, or the toughest calls, was pass interference, the short ones. I didn't worry about the long defensive pass interferences downfield. Leave that to Kirk, and Kirk can handle that. Buddy can handle that. But the short passes and the holding calls, I was responsible for the tackle on my side of the field. And so those were the calls that were the toughest. And the thing that you have to worry about is being ready to make a call, and being alive on every single play of the game. There are plays where you might not have a lot of runs to your side, so you might have a tendency to kind of relax a little bit, but you never have you never can relax, because you don't have that many calls that you have to make. But those two calls, if it's to my side of the field, I worry about that tackle if he's holding. I worry about that short, quick pass that's 5-10 yards downfield. Those were the tough ones, because those were your babies, and so you've got to be on those and make sure you get those right. And so I've been in some tough situations. One of the toughest games that I had to officiate was after the Raiders lost the ball game on the tuck call that one year with Walt Coleman, as he and I were crew members for a long time, and that he made it in the ball game, and that's when they came up with a tuck rule. And the next year at Oakland, our crew had a game in Oakland, and the fans were throwing quarters at us on the field. So that was a tough time. I spent the whole pregame picking up quarters and pocketing them, but they throw stuff at you, snowballs, stuff like that in the wintertime. So it's not an easy things when things are tight, and especially things that you didn't have anything to do with, from another ball game you had no responsibilities for whatsoever. But the fans don't realize that they put all officials in the same bucket, and we're all officials. And so that's why right now I get a kick out of what's going on now. After every year, you seem to get the same kind of situation regarding the officials, and they want to get permanent officials and that. And NFL has tried that, but it right now, just like the players, I mean, you got the best players in the world in the NFL. You've got the best officials in the NFL. They all come from the same group of folks, college officials. And so you've got the best in the world right now, and you can't get any better. You can get guys that can know the rules better if they're full-time, but there's a lot of things making officials full-time that you'd have to guarantee long contracts, because you couldn't not do the job and be in the position to be fired right away. And so that's why you look at the officials and what they do and where they come from. You look at Kirk Dornan and people like Buddy Horton, and you got some of the best people that you can have in any sport. So I applaud the guys. I know what they've been through. I know what they're going through, and they're doing a good job. When you get 90-95% of your calls correct, you're doing a good job, and especially the football game, because there's so many things out there that are just, you just have to say, holding is holding, unless it's to your side of the field and it doesn't affect the play. You just kind of call and let the guy, maybe get away with it, and let him know when you have a chance, hey, that's holding. If it comes your way and it can affect the play, you're gonna get flagged for it. So
you bet.
Those are the tough ones: holding and pass interference.
All right, Aaron, thank you. Kirk, you're up. Component of the game, the most challenging, or a call that where you kind of always felt was your specialty call. It was the biggest one for you.
I don't know about having any specialty call, but the one that gave me the most trouble, and it's not something that happens all that often, but it's illegal contact. Because where I am, I'm straight down the middle of the field. And so I've got the football in front of me, receivers to my right, receivers to my left, and you're going to focus in on a guy for a short period of time. But when they come up the field, you don't have any depth perception as you would maybe from the side looking back through this way. And so I always was paranoid that I was going to miss one. And it took a while to get over that. But then the other biggest fear is, again, because you're in the middle and they're spread out to both sides of you, you've got, let's say your key is on the left and he's flying down the side and then breaks towards the middle, or he starts towards the middle and breaks out. And there's another receiver out there that your deep side guy is covering. And you can't forget that from the other side, which now your blind side, here comes some guy running a post, deep post. And before you know it, you're pretty comfortable with what's going on with your receiver, and you look and this guy's in your lap. And I just thank my lucky stars, because I saw a couple guys that actually got credit for a pass breakup on the field. And it had to just be crushingly embarrassing. But those were just always something that you were worried about, that it just, and that fear never goes away. Because it's inherent in every single play.
And the guys are so fast. I mean, you can't believe the speed of these guys out on the field compared to high school and college. These guys are so much faster and so much quicker than those guys. I mean, it's just amazing. That affects you too.
I got to tell you, the first time I realized, and I started thinking over my head, my first training camp was at Kansas City, and Paul Hackett was the quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. And they had Montana and Steve Bono. I think there was a kid named Matthews and another one. They had 4 of them. And they're doing all these drills, and we're kind of looking, and I went with the referee because I was brand new. So he took me to all the different stations and, pointing out things. And I remember Hackett kept talking about this footwork coming out of from under center. And I'm not really focused in on what he's talking about. And we go out and there's a scrimmage that afternoon, and I'm standing there back 25 yards downfield. It's just kind of a 7-on-7, like a shell thing. It wasn't a full-on scrimmage. And quarterback takes a snap and down he goes. And Hackett just starts screaming. And I mean, he lit these guys up. We talked about it all morning long. You can't take a first long step out of there. You got to take a quick jab step to get out of there. What had happened? Snapped the ball. Quarterback took this long right step out, and the pulling guard got up out of his 3-point and stepped on his foot, knocked him to the ground. And I'm looking at that, and here's a guy 6'5", 320, and he's got feet as quick as the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh boy.
Oh boy.
And like Aaron says, they're just, we're backpedaling. We think we're keeping up. We're losing 5 yards every step. And they're on you in a hurry. They're on you in a hurry.
Okay, buddy. Component of the game, a call.
My nemesis was force out. At a game, New York Jets at Cleveland Browns. And like a minute to go in the game, New York Jets were going to get the scoring touchdown to win the game. And there's a pass thrown, and I came into the league as a back judge. 5 years later, they moved me to a field judge, to the sideline. And that's like my second year as a field judge. And I got this play coming at me. The guy's up in the end zone. He secures the ball in the air, but in my opinion, I thought he was going to land out of bounds. The guy gave him a shove, he landed out of bounds. I was with Mike Carey at the time, and he and another official came to me and says, I ruled a complete pass. I didn't think it was going to land in bounds. They came and said, "Buddy, got a force out. I said, no. When it came down in bounds, it was going to be a complete pass. They were adamant. I said, nope, stick to my guns. So get to the hotel, I cross Tornado Sports Center, and there it is, clear as day. So 2 days later, I get a package in the mail, and it's the New York Times that says, New York Jets defeated by the Buddy system. Oh, okay. I don't know who sent it to me. Someone sent it to me. I still have the article. So, but I kicked that call twice that year. And the next year they changed the rule because I couldn't get it right. So they changed it. So another funny story happened to me. We were going to Europe to do some games in London. And I had the Detroit Lions and the Atlanta Falcons. So Cindy and I, my wife, would go, a week early, hang out, have a good time. And so we're going into a public restroom to go to the bathroom. And some guy comes out and he looks at me and says, he points at me and says, I know who you is. You better call a good game Sunday. And I said, what the heck? So all the way in London, some guy knows who I am, and I'm a referee working the game in London. And he says, I better do a good job. I said, oh, Lord, okay. So it was probably because of the buddy system, I'm sure.
Yeah. There you go, guys. Well, look at way back in 1962, Bob Dylan wrote a song with the lyrics, "The times they are a-changin'." What would you guys say the changes that you've seen in the NFL? And it could be officiating wise, it could be with the style of play, stadiums, coaches, players, whatever. What's changed from when you first got into the NFL to the game that it is today? And I'm just going to throw it out there, guys. You can talk whatever you want.
Probably for me, it's replay. I mean, no official wants to work a ball game and then find out later that he missed something that cost the team some points or the game. You always want to go out and leave the game and say, hey, you did a good job and you had a perfect game. But replay has changed things. You look at things like fumbles. You don't see officials running in saying it was or was not a fumble. You let replay, if you're not sure, make the call. And that's been the biggest change. Another thing for me was my first year, first game I had in Kansas City. I mentioned the gun thing I had when they fired the gun to end the quarters. But another situation was the line judge kept time of the game. And Pat Haggerty says, oh, don't worry about the time. They do it in the stadium and they always, and I never timed the game before really. And so I'd always have to catch up and put time back on my stopwatch and to, get the time. But this happened in the fourth quarter and the clock in the stadium went out and I had not corrected the time over the course of the quarter. And Pat Haggerty came up to me and asked me how much time is left in the fourth quarter for the timer. And I kind of smiled to myself and I said, Pat, by my time, this game is over. And that was, they thought it was funny too, but I was just petrified because I had forgotten and the clock was just running and running and running because I mean, I had never, had to worry about keeping time and doing that, so, but anyway, that replay and changing that position from line judge to headline, where I didn't have to worry about the clock or the gun anymore.
Yeah.
Things that made a difference in me as far as officiating.
You bet. Kirk, Buddy, what do you guys got?
Probably the safety of the players.
Yeah.
Has changed. When that started changing, I mean, I got dinged in 1998. I got dinged twice when a receiver caught the pass, just fell forward, fell into the defender who wasn't even with his head down. But they said the defender made contact with his helmet. So I get a downgrade for it. And I'm just like going, what do you want me to do? I mean, I was baffled. I didn't know what to do at that point. And then 2 weeks later, I get another one. And it was really, and now I can only imagine now what they're going through. I mean, I've been out for 8 years and the stuff that's going on out there now, I mean, you can see a lot of them pretty clear because the ones that don't want to live by the rule they're out to show somebody how tough they are. At least that's my perception. But it's almost impossible. And this is probably where it's a good thing replay is coming in, especially in the college where they've got the targeting rule, is because it can look so brutal. And then you see it and it's a shoulder pad to the sternum and the helmets are crossing in front. And if you don't have that exact look, you're going to think that he just drilled him head to head.
Yep.
So And then the roughing the quarterback, I mean, we've all seen what's going on this year, and I really think they're not sure. I mean, there's the slamming them to the ground, there's the swinging them to the ground, there's, pulling them across their body to the ground. Well, if you got a Ben Roethlisberger, if you think you're going to reach up and pull him by the jersey and take him to the ground, not going to happen. So the defenders, they're in a really, really tough spot, and that puts the referee in a tough spot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And one of the things that they're doing now is that because of the head injuries and the trauma and the spinal cord injuries, they're really focusing on the use of the helmet. So I remember when they first started the defenseless receiver thing, they had to really kind of coach us into this, making this call, because we weren't used to making the call. So they'd give us like a year or two to get used to it, and then they started hammering us on it because we were never really used to seeing that hit. Now you see it more often, you see it called more often. But now what they're slowly going to start doing is when the guy puts his helmet down and hits him with the little button on top of the helmet, they call that illegal use of the helmet. And right now they're not penalizing it, but they're fining players for that. So it's kind of interesting to listen to the compliance department talk about fining players for this, or warning them for this repeated use of the helmet. And we've seen over and over again where it's not the player that's getting hit, it's a player that's delivering the blow that gets hurt.
Yeah.
It's going to have the spinal trauma, that's going to have the head trauma. And so they want to try and take that out of the game, which, you've got these players that are paralyzed or with concussions and things. So they're really trying to get that out of the game. One of the things that they're also changing officiating wise is you're not seeing guys, especially the NFL, the deep officials, move much anymore. So they're talking about their visual acuity, which means if you're running full speed, and Aaron, you were an outfielder, right, at one time? So when you're running, the baseball is kind of going up and down on you. Your eyes are moving. So what they want you to do is stand still, keep your eyes still, and you get better clarity of what you see. And so you see a lot of deep officials, they'll run for a little bit, then also you see them stop, and they'll watch the play go by, and they'll try and get the proper angle. They call it moving with a purpose. So they're getting away from, and what they're saying is, hey, if you get beat to the goal line, you get beat to the goal line. Hopefully the backers you get there to get to it, but that's what they're kind of leaning towards now. And you'll see a lot of line of scrimmage officials, all they're doing is basically they're just pivoting and watching the play. And they're going to let the play go, then they're going to trail it what they call soft steps. So they're not going to be sprinting anymore. They're not going to be balls out like that. They're just going to be trying and keep that visual clarity to see the action. That's kind of what the teaching is now, but it's not going to filter down into the colleges, because colleges want the guys to get, they want to be to the goal line. And my travels, I've seen these different coordinators say, no, we're not teaching that. We want you guys to get to the goal line, get whatever it is. But we've also proven that with you standing still and getting the proper angle and seeing between the plays, seeing between the players, when the ball comes in and the players are coming together, you have a better chance of getting the call right if you're standing still and you're not moving or hopping around or bouncing around. So that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen in the last 2 years in officiating and how the game is going to be officiated. It'll probably take a few years for it to filter down, if it does at all. But that's one of the ones I saw, and the use of the helmet is huge. One of the other calls that I've noticed that they haven't been calling a lot of, but there's been prevalent, is a tripping call. And I think we saw Tom Brady get hit on one the other day. But once again, we have to teach the officials what to look for on a trip. I mean, you probably see at least one a game, maybe one a game to a game. So where it's just a matter of the muscle memory, trying to remember and get those visual images of what a play looks like to call it. So with the advent of replaying the video, and we've come a long way with officiating. I remember back in the days what it was, the 8mm reel-to-reels. Then went to Betamax, then went to VHS, then it went to DVDs or CDs, and then it was what the discs they gave us, the flash drives they gave us.
Yeah.
And now you walk out of the game, you got the game on a cloud that comes right to your surface.
Yeah.
So it's come a long ways. The video's come a long way, and the quality is a lot better too. So
But there's
Okay, Buddy, why don't you tell us about the role that you have with the NFL now? You're talking about the insights of officials and how you want them to officiate. Tell us about your role, what you're doing with the.
Well, I'm the recruiting coordinator. So I have scouts that work under me. I assign the games. They either do games video or they go on site to see games. Right now we have approximately 500 college officials that we're looking at, Division I. Well, and FCS, FBS officials we're looking at. Mainly we want people that are in a Power 5 right now. And we have criteria what we're looking for officials. We do extensive background checks on them. We do psychological profiles on some of them. What we're doing now is, because we don't have NFL Europe anymore, so we're trying to select some to go to some of these all-star games that they have in the postseason, so we get a little look at them. The XFL and the USFL are also using some of our officials also, so we get a look at them there. So basically, we supply them our developmental officials. We try and coach them about the rules, on the mechanics, but then we hand them off to Mike Pereira's running the USFL, Dean Blandino's running the XFL, and they're in charge of them after that. But we use it as a scouting ground to watch and look at potential candidates, because each year we have 6 to 8 to 10 officials either retire or get fired or whatever, and we're always looking to replace people. So my job is to recognize who they are, get them scouted, get profiles done on them, get scouting reports done on them, and then present those to the upper management when it's time to do the hiring and firing or whatever. So I do have a role in who gets looked at, who gets hired, not who gets fired. Unfortunately, I don't want that job anyway. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting that I started out as a scout. Walt Anderson called me up, asked me if I wanted to be a scout. I said, sure. He said, would you travel? I said, if you wanted me to travel, I'd travel. So I think I was on the job for 2 months, 3 months. The guy who's in my position now retired because his wife got sick, so he had to give up the position. So it was 1 month where there was no one in charge at all. So Walt called me up. Walt Anderson called me up a couple of days before Thanksgiving to ask me if I wanted the job. I said, he said, you'll be traveling a little bit. I said, okay. He said, this is what we're going to pay you. I said, where do I sign? So I said, okay, sure. It's been very good for me. I've enjoyed it. Met a lot of people, got a lot of new friends, college officials that want to be my friends and stuff. But yeah, it's been very good. So it's and Jay, I remember your first game as a referee. You remember that? Where were we at?
I sure do.
Washington.
The first game we had, Buddy, was at Arizona. Northern Arizona at University of Arizona.
Yeah,
yep.
Yes.
1992.
Yep.
Okay, guys, look, we've done a lot of good cerebral questioning here. Time to loosen this up a little bit and finish up with a little bit of fun, huh? So share with us a game, coach, player, stadium, a moment that's kind of most memorable for you during your officiating career. It might be something serious, something touching, something laughable, humorous, might be forgettable. But I know whatever you're going to share, it'll be something that's memorable. So something that stands out with you in your career, maybe a game, an event, something. Darren, why don't you start us off here?
One thing that I remember, and is my initial foray into the NFL, and I know I've mentioned it to Buddy when I've seen him before, that I would love to reapply for the NFL to become an official again in the NFL, but I have some criteria that have to be met. One of those that as a referee, I would get 2 timeouts, referee timeouts, myself a quarter, so that I can always get my breath.
Yeah.
And also I appreciated working with Buddy. He laughs about it, but he was a fan of my sisters, and I would sing their songs on flights. One of the things that I would do when I'd get on a flight after a ball game is get my earphones and turn on the Pointer Sisters and start singing their songs, and Buddy would be over there laughing because I forget that I was singing.
loud.
And everybody could hear it. And so, but I never forget that. And so, Buddy, thank you for,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, Aaron, you were so excited.
I was so excited. Yeah.
I think there's a little story about your sisters and you and maybe your son in a common game. Is that right?
Pardon?
I think there was a story you have related about you officiating and your sisters, doing some entertainment and your son being involved in a game. You want to relate that one with us?
One of the things that I never forget is working a ball game. It was a game in Pittsburgh. It was Pittsburgh versus the Indianapolis Colts, a preseason game, and they assigned me the game. And my son was one of the players on the Indianapolis Colts at the time. And in the second half of the game, when he got in the game, I was on the coach sideline, and one of the coaches came up to me and said, "Hey, we're going to throw a pass to your son on this next play. So tell the camera people and whatever to get ready, because he's going to get the ball the next play." And sure enough, the next snap, there was a pass to my son. He caught it, ran for 10 yards, and I called timeout when he went out of bounds, and he flipped me the ball. In fact, I got pictures of it. And I'll never forget that, because after the ball game, the officials got on me and said that I gave him too many yards, and that and they were all over me about Darren catching a pass on my sideline, and that was something that was special, something I'll never forget. And I wish he could have played more, but injuries. Football is a tough sport. Yeah, I mean, with all the concussions and stuff like that, and CTE and all the stuff that's happening. I mean, it's a tough sport. In fact, my son now is in protocol for CTE and head injuries, because he had concussions when he was playing football in college and in the NFL. And so right now they've tested him, and so when he is no longer on this earth, they're going to see if he had CTE. And when I see him, in fact, I'm going to see him this weekend. I try to figure out if he's got it all together or not, but he's doing okay, and the concussions haven't seemed to bother him now. But some of the things are really, really tough to get over, and a lot of football players have died, and a lot of them are going to die because of the sports being so rough and tough. And that's why I hope one day they'll have a helmet and other equipment that'll save some lives out there, because it's not an easy sport. It's a tough sport. Yep. They need to do whatever they can to make it as safe as possible. Yeah.
Well, Darren had a phenomenal career at WSU as a receiver, certainly. And you said that was a preseason game that you officiated that he played in, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The NFL they won't sign you to a game that is a regular season game where you got a relative playing.
Yeah. And the whole component of player safety, officials take a lot of heat, and the league does too, or all organizations involved in football. But you guys know player safety is it's so enormous. It's such an enormous issue now with rules and everything going on, and it's not going to quit.
No, player safety is the primary, thing right now in football.
You betcha. Buddy, what do you got for us?
The thing that struck me the most was each stadium was unique. Of course, I like most of because of the cities and the food that all the different cities had. Sushi, whatever it was. I love the restaurants. Each city had great restaurants. But one of the things that I loved the most was during the pregame, out with the players, you're interacting with the players, the coaches, and things. But then when the national anthem went off, and then you had flyovers go over the stadiums. I mean, it was just amazing. Just that moment, you're in the moment of that was amazing to me, and it still is nowadays, right? Especially like last week when we saw the flyovers at the championship games. Amazing. And you just can't, you've done it before, Jay. You know what it's like. It's just amazing. So.
Yep. Kirk, what do you got for us?
I was, like we all were, on some games that some bizarre things happened. One of them was, I think it was either 97 or 99, the San Diego at the New York Giants, and there was a snowstorm. And they were course, throwing snowballs, pelting players and us, and it got a little strange. They had to stop the game a couple times and warn people. And turns out that 2 firemen, New York City firemen, were among the snowball throwers. They both got fired for it. So it was might have been fun at the time, but the other one was on the game, the Music City Miracle, when they had the kickoff, 13 seconds left, throw back to Wycheck to Dyson, and he goes 70 yards up the sidelines, and they were only left 3 seconds on the clock, and they end up winning. That was a playoff game. I was on a game when Tom Brady got his start. It was in New England. Drew Bledsoe was the quarterback. He rolled out and then tried to get to the sideline and up the sideline, and New York Jets, Mo Lewis hit him. And he didn't get up. He had a torn spleen, ruptured spleen, several other. I mean, he was in serious jeopardy there for a while. He got back on the field, but the coach decided that he was going to stay with the guy that they'd been winning with till they got to the AFC Championship game, and it was New England at Pittsburgh, and I'm on that game. And Brady sprains his ankle, and here comes Drew Bledsoe off the bench, leads him down the field and throws the winning touchdown pass. So, I mean, that's kind of full circle there. And now I buy all the wine he's got.
A little double back, huh?
But the fun, one of the most fun games, because it involved local people and local teams, was in Monday Night Football in 1999. The Seahawks were back in Green Bay, and it was Holmgren's first year in Seattle and his first trip back to Green Bay. And so it was pretty electric that night. And the good news for me was I was on the game with Steve Wilson. Our umpire was from Spokane. And the guy that I'm looking at right now, Aaron Pointer, was our head linesman. So there was 3 of us from what was originally our small college. They call them local officials. And then we were all 3 on the same game. It was a lot of fun. But the most fun I had was probably my next to the last game. And Jay, you were on it. It was October 2nd in 2015, where 9 of us, I think, showed up at Bellarmine freshman game.
Yep.
And the reason we did, I wanted to work a game. I had worked my first game with my dad, and I wanted to work a game with my son. And so it was Jay and Darren, and I can't remember who all we had, but I remember counting them up. We had 247 years of experience on a freshman game, 7-man mechanics. And,
Oh, geez. Wow.
It was a joy.
I think we had Merle on that, Jerry Meyerhoff, Danny Spriesterbach, probably Bernie Holscher. But
And Joe, there's an umpire. In fact, I've worked with him in their preseason the last couple of years. Umpire Joe, I can't think of his Horn. Joe Horn.
Joe Horn, sure.
He was on the game. And now, of course, I've seen him the last couple of years because I go out when they're apprentices for July and August when they're out at Franklin Pierce High School. So
you bet.
See some of the guys there. So,
well, guys, this is one of these scenarios where we could go on and on and on and on, like we quite often did after games back in the day. But we're going to bring this to a close. But I know all of you guys feel this way, and all of us officials do, that officiating in any sport at any level, it's got a challenge to it, but it's also got a lot of wonderful, wonderful aspects with the people you meet, being directly involved in the game, with the athletes, with the coaches, and with the community. So we know I know you guys have all had wonderful experiences officiating. Maybe some of the highlights of your entire life, certainly, along with your family and your friends. But I know we all know that Tacoma and Pierce County's certainly been a hotbed for sports officials. You look through the year, we got Aaron, Kirk, and Buddy here with us. Jack got our group into the NFL. We had Bruce Alexander used to ref in the NBA, and right now we got Gwen Walcott, umpire, called balls and strikes in Major League Baseball. So it's an incredible thing to happen right here in Tacoma and Pierce County.
I'm proud of each one of everyone too.
Yeah.
You betcha. And all of us, guys, to you three within our city and county, we thoroughly enjoy watching you officiate. You know, it's something great about being able to turn the TV on and look and say, I know that guy, you know, he's from Tacoma, he's from Pierce County. And to know that you three made it to the bigs, to the absolute top of officiating. I think Aaron said it. The NFL officials are the greatest football officials on the planet Earth. No matter what anybody says, they are. And you guys strive, you work so hard, you are dedicated to your profession, and it worked really, really well for you, your families and your friends, and it worked really, really well for all of us here in our community. So thank you for your time and your effort.
Thank you.
And, thank you, Jay.
You betcha. And for everyone, that concludes today's presentation. And on behalf of our Rainier Asphalt and Concrete and the Shanneman Sports Museum in Tacoma, Pierce County, once again, I'm Jay Strickers here, thanking all of you for joining us for another edition of Locker Room Chat. And in closing, I'm going to use Bob Robertson's sign off and an old Beach Boys song. So let's remember to always, and in always, be true to your school. Thank you and good night.